Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 23. Today on the show, we're doing something a little bit different, as Dan and I discuss why and how we planned our first non-whitetail big game hunts out west, and why you might want to consider a similar adventure. This episode is sure to get you dreaming big, so settle in and enjoy. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. And with me today on the show is just my trusty co-host, Dan Johnson. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, but I'm not in front of my computer at home.
I know it sounds a little different. It sounds like you are definitely not at work, so that's a good thing, right?
I am not at work. I am sitting on a dirt road right now in the middle of nowhere, just so I'm close enough to the, I don't know, I can see a cell phone tower in the distance flashing lights. So I'm good enough to get reception, but in the least populated county in the United States. That is
awesome. That's a pretty cool thing to be in. I guess not many people have probably ever been somewhere with so few people, I bet.
It is isolated. I mean, if you want to ever be alone, this is the place you come.
I guess so. Well, it's pretty awesome that you're able to join us for the podcast, despite the fact that you're out there in the middle of nowhere. And it's really cool because what we're going to talk about today, as you know, is exactly what you're doing right now. Today I wanted us to talk about whitetail hunters going west or going north or going anywhere except for where they usually go hunting whitetails. I want to talk about how whitetail hunters, what it's like for a whitetail hunter to go hunt something different. Maybe it's big game. Maybe you're hunting elk out in the Rocky Mountains. Maybe you're doing what you're doing, which is hunting mule deer out west. Maybe you're going up north chasing moose. Whatever it is, I kind of want to talk about our own experiences about chasing something different than whitetails. I know we've both been able to try that now. So that's kind of what I'm thinking we should kind of focus on tonight. And I want to get things kicked off, though, about hearing how you're doing, because I haven't really got any kind of scoop from you yet about this hunt. So for the listeners out there, can you first fill us in on where the heck you are, where this least populated county in the country is, and what you're doing out there?
I am in Arthur County, Nebraska, and let's see, I'm about 40 or 50 miles, I believe, from the Colorado border, and it's grasslands. I mean, you get to the top of a hill, and all you see is it just looks like infinity. I mean, you can see forever, just hill after hill after hill, mule deer, antelope, whitetails. They got it all here. I even saw some Merriam turkeys. So, nice. Which is strange because I think it was Merriam's. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Merriam's, but there's no trees for them to roost in. So I'm just kind of curious where they go at night. Anyway, it's gorgeous out here. It's gorgeous.
I bet. I've driven through somewhere near that area, I think. But I've just always, what I've loved about the West is just the wide open spaces, and like they call Montana, the big sky country. Just being able to see so far is pretty awesome. So you're out there.
It's nuts because I feel so small out here. I don't know. It's just something. It was like a rude awakening when I woke up. That first morning I was out here, I spent the night in the hotel. First morning I came out here and started driving around, and as the sun came up, I was like, this is a different planet. It's nuts. Just goes forever.
It's pretty awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep, there's something about that that wide open and no people and no buildings and cities and everything, just be able to see out across the great outdoors. That's a pretty cool thing. So
yeah, and the thing about it is, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to, as I'm out there, trying to put what I'm seeing in words, and it's very hard to do because it's just like nature at its finest. I don't know. I don't know. It's just it's kind of an emotional thing.
I bet. I definitely think I can relate to that too with some of my trips out west for sure. But before we get too much into some of this stuff, which I definitely want to talk more about, kind of the things that have driven me out west and maybe what drove you out there too. I'm curious, right now you're 3 or 4 days in the hunt, you're chasing mule deer. What's the status report, Dan? What's happening? Do you have anything on the ground yet?
Man, I wish. This is not your Midwest hunting at all. There's no cover, so they're bedded down in grass, and the grass isn't very high. So I mean, they're always they see you before. The first day I went out and I hopped into some these hills, and so the first thing I did was check my wind, and I'm walking up, busted instantly. And two or three ridges over, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So, it's definitely a learning process as I'm getting every day and every stalk I go on, I'm getting better, and then I'm getting closer to these game. I've had within shooting distance, I've had mule deer does. I've had whitetail does and whitetail bucks. This morning, I had a whitetail buck that I was stalking, and I could just see like part of his antlers, so I couldn't really tell how big he was. But as I'm approaching him, something happened, wind swirled or something, and how typically a whitetail will stand up and look at you, like an animal will stand up, get its bearings.
Yeah.
He just took off. So that was the closest at about 30 yards I've had for a buck. I haven't even seen a mule deer buck yet, but tonight I just got off of a sorghum field, and I was surrounded. I think I counted 16 mule deer does and their fawns.
Oh, nice.
So, an antelope, man, they are a different breed. I mean, they are so spooky that I'm probably 500 yards away through a spotting scope, just watching them, and I've been watching them for about an hour, and then all of a sudden they just take off, and I know it's not me. They're looking in one direction, they just take off. So that antelope is going to be a struggle, I think.
So how many more days do you have left, Dan?
Let's see. Today's Tuesday. I got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm probably going to leave Saturday. So 3 more days.
So what do you...
3 or 4 more days, yeah.
What are you targeting at this point? Are you still shooting for a muley buck, or are you going to take a whitetail if you get a shot, or an antelope, or what's your goal at this point?
My goal has changed from the very first 2 days. It was, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to glass my ass off, I'm going to try to find not a giant deer, but a buck. I want a mule deer buck or a whitetail buck, and spotting and stalking it would be awesome. I'd like to have a buck antelope because I bought both tags.
Okay.
But as I'm realizing this is not easy, I will definitely be lowering my standards. Like I passed a couple mule deer does at about 30 yards. I was coming up over these little hills, and they're bedded on the backside of these hills with the wind in their favor, and so you got to come up from the opposite direction, and I don't know. It's just I passed cast a couple does, hoping that there'd be some bucks in there. There hasn't been a buck yet. So my goal right now, I think tomorrow will be kind of a, if it's brown, it's down type of thing. Which I've just been thinking, it's like, okay, so I practice management on all the properties I can hunt in Iowa. So I'm kind of have an internal struggle of whether I should practice management here too. You know what I mean?
Right.
If I shoot a small buck or something that's not mature, as opposed to, you know, a doe, you know, that's fine. I'll shoot a doe in a heartbeat. But, you know, like an immature buck, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough call. I've struggled kind of with the same thing too for, you know, my hunts going out west for elk. To a degree, it feels weird, you know, thinking about shooting a really young deer or elk, given the fact of where we're at as deer hunters. But
yeah,
at least where I've gotten, what I've kind of set my mind to is the fact that when you're starting on a new species, at least in my mind, you're kind of starting back at square one. And before you can kill a big mature bull elk, I feel like I need to prove to myself and experience myself what it's like to kill any elk.
Yep.
So, you know, last year I had my first elk hunting trip, and my plan was to hold out for a bull. I originally thought I was going to try to hold out for a branch antler bull, but pretty quickly after half that trip had passed by, I realized, wow, this isn't as easy as I was hoping it might be. You know, if I want to kill anything, I might need to change those standards. So going into it this year, I'm going to be much less selective, at least until I get that first experience out of the way, and then, you know, take another step up the ladder. But I think there's something to be gained just by having that first experience, regardless of if it's a big bull or a cow or a doe, mule deer, or whatever. I gotta imagine it'll be pretty awesome, even if you do kill a doe or a small buck or something out there. Being able to spot and stalk on one like that out in the sandhills like that, that'll be a pretty memorable experience, regardless of how big that deer is. I would think.
Oh yeah, and this is already a memorable experience. I mean, I'm sitting here over a hayfield last night, and I got, you know, about 7 or 8 antelope in one direction. I got I bumped a couple. Actually last night I had about a 140, maybe a 138 pointer.
Wow.
And then about a 155, maybe 160 class 10 whitetail.
Jeez.
So I bumped them going into spot, and I was glassing this hill, and I was glassing, and then, you know, you take 1 or 2 steps and you glass some more, 1 or 2 steps until you glass the whole field. Well, I don't know. I must have got lazy or thought the hill, I had seen the bottom. I take 2 more steps and they blow out of there. So I don't know. This is a patience game, man. You just got to sit. Like the first night, the first day, and then the next morning, I just went walking. I just would walk, and then I'd spot. You have to sit down and let the area calm down, and you'll be surprised at what works its way back into the area without you even knowing it.
Yeah, it sounds just
I don't know. I kind of went off on a rant there. I don't remember what the original question was.
I had asked you what your favorite color was, and somehow we ended up on talking about sitting down and letting things come to you. So it was a weird thing that went on there, Dan.
It's baby blue.
Oh,
blue is my favorite color.
That sounds just perfect for your eyes. So let's take a step back. I want to talk about, you know, what you've learned, you know, on this trip, and, you know, how hunting mule deer is different than hunting whitetails. And I want to share some things about how, you know, what I've learned on my elk trip.
Yeah.
But before that, let's start at the beginning for both of us. And that's, you know, I'm curious to know what made you want to try hunting something different than whitetails. What made you want to go west and chase something like this? Let's hear from you, and then I'll kind of share my perspective with elk.
Well, a lot of it there's a couple things that made me want to head out. One, with my daughter at her age, and my wife is now pregnant again, it's more of a time thing. You know, as my kids start to grow up, and as they, start their school and activities, it's going to be harder for me to get away. The other thing is my body just can't, in 10 years, 10, 15 years, I'm going to be, in my late 40s and probably still, I know guys who go out and do it, but, I got terrible knees the way it is. So it's just like body and age right now just seems, the best time to do, get some of these things done, and as the family grows, not saying that there's not going to be time after they're old enough where I can leave the house, they can use the toilets by themselves and feed themselves. But yeah, there's something inside me that was kind of like, come west, like Field of Dreams,
Yeah.
It was like, if you make it, they will come. Well, it was like, if you save your money and you can go hunt animals out west. I don't know. It was a little voice in my head that was telling me, do it and do it now. I don't know. And so I did.
Have you always wanted to do something like this, or is it a newfound interest?
Well, remember that podcast we had with Bernie?
Yep.
I think his name was. Yeah. We it started right then and there about the DIY trips.
Yeah.
And it just was like, thoughts started rolling. What could I do? Under a certain budget and the time constraints that I had? I had 4 extra days of vacation that I could play around with this year. So, yeah, there it is. It's kind of hard to describe. I just did it. I asked my wife, and she said, "Yeah, cool, go for it." And now I'm in the middle of nowhere talking to you.
Yeah, I think I can relate to a lot of stuff you said there too. I think maybe not always, but for a long time knew I wanted to go hunt big game in the mountains. For me, it was always the mountains, though. Just in general, I just love the mountains. I mean, my biggest hobby and passion other than hunting is camping, hiking, backpacking, doing anything out in the mountains. So I always knew I wanted to get out there with a gun or bow and hunt some of these animals. That was always something that I thought would be incredible, combining, my love for the hunt with something I like so much, like backpacking and stuff. And so it was always something that I was like, someday I'll go do it. Someday I'll do it. And for me, the trigger, for whatever reason, I knew forever I'd wanted to do it, but I was reading this book called The Scavenger's Guide to Hawk Cuisine by Stephen Ranella. It's a really, really good book. And Stephen Ranella was writing or talking about this elk hunt he was on. And for whatever reason, while reading that story, and I'd read hundreds of other elk hunting stories and watched elk hunting on TV shows and everything like that, but for whatever reason, while reading that book and listening or reading that story, it just, the flip switched. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do it. Like I keep saying someday, why not?
Right.
Why not do it now? Why not this year?
Right.
And I literally texted my buddy right then. I put the book down and texted a friend of mine who had gone elk hunting a number of times and who'd always told me, he's like, yeah, you got to get out there. You got to experience it. But I'd always said, someday. Well, I texted him right then. I was like, we're going elk hunting this year. And he texted back and he's like, all right, we're doing it. And so we did. But yeah, it was always, like you said, there's a little something calling in the back of my head that's just been saying, you got to go out there. You got to try it. And I knew, given my experiences out there doing other things, that I would love it, if for no other reason, just for the country, just for being out there in the just this huge, vast wilderness. So that was alluring in itself, but I just couldn't imagine how awesome it could be to combine that with chasing an animal. And now that I've done it, I can say that it's just as good and maybe even better than I was expecting. Has it lived up to your expectations so far, your hunt, and what you were dreaming about and thinking about?
Just like everything in life, you watch a TV show, or you read a book, or you listen to someone talk about it. you kind of have this idea of what it's like to come out here or in the mountains or in the plains like where I'm at, but then you don't really get to know what it's all about until you actually live it. And I'll be honest with you, my expectations, I'm not going to say that they're not living up to my expectations. It's just different than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough, and you got to work every step and every move you make is, you have to, like when you're sitting in a tree stand whitetail hunting, you can kind of zone out for a little bit.
Yep.
Here you can't do that.
No.
I mean, you make one false move, and just like with the bucks that I saw yesterday, you see, you shut down, you zone out for one step. That one step costs you. So you got to be on point the entire time. And it's crazy because I've started to think like, today it really kind of sunk in. I'm like, I'm not paying attention just in front of me now. I'm paying attention to behind me at the same time, because you get skyline, you're done. You get, you pop out, you may think you have the wind, but the terrain changes with every 50 yards. You think you have, the advantage. You turn around and there's a whole another ridge that you didn't even see because the ridge you're coming off of blocked it. So it's like you got to go slow, and you got to just be aware of absolutely everything, and actually think like a predator. You think like a coyote or a mountain lion. What would they do to attack this animal?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's so different doing this kind of spot and stalk type hunt.
Yeah.
Even when I was out there chasing elk, it's a much more active hunt and engaged in that, like you said. I mean, like with deer hunting, in a lot of cases, whitetail hunting, a lot of our actual action is being done in the preseason, right? When we're going out there and scouting something and deciding, okay, this is the spot, and then trimming lanes, hanging a stand, doing all that stuff. But then the actual hunt itself is really get to the place where you did the work 4 months ago and sit there a long time until the animal comes by.
Yep.
But, in this kind of situation that you're in, or that I'm going to be in a couple days, it's, like you said, every step you take is work. Every step you take could make or break your hunt. You constantly have to be engaged. You constantly have to be on point. You constantly have to be ready and thinking about what to do next. As much of a challenge as that is, I've found there's a huge attractiveness to that. Like, it's just so much fun. It's so, I don't know, I can't think of a better word, but it's engaging. It's got your whole brain and body and every bit of you. Like you said, you have to think like a predator, and you feel more like a predator almost. It's very primal, at least for me, when you're stepping through the woods or through the grasslands or whatever it might be. Every sense is engaged. I feel like the human body is working at its optimal, as we're supposed to be when you're in a situation like that.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more, because just imagine, the way humans live their lives today, it's kind of wake up, go to work, type on the computer for a little bit, or if you're a factory worker, you screw your bolts in or whatever. Your brain isn't functioning like it's supposed to. We only use however many out here, or, especially when you're going up in the mountains. If you make one false move, not only is the animal going to see you, but you could hurt yourself falling down the side of a cliff or something. Yeah. Here, I could, roll my ankle in a cow rut, but, I'm not going to fall, hundreds of feet if I make a wrong move out here.
Yeah, it's definitely just different all the way around from that perspective too. There's a lot of things that are riding on the decisions you make and how prepared you are for that hunt. which I think brings me to the next thing. Let's say there's a guy out there listening right now, guy or girl listening to what we're talking about here, and they're thinking to themselves, you know what, maybe I need to get out there and try something like this. How, Dan, did you go about preparing for this? I'm preparing for my second elk hunting trip right now and leaving in a couple days, so I can share a few things about what I've learned about the preparation. But I'm curious for you, deciding on this a couple months ago, what have you done to get ready for this hunt, to plan this hunt, and to actually get out there and do it?
Oh man, I can't tell you how many hours I have looked at aerial maps of this land. Talking with other people who have done it, on Facebook, just, hey, who's been out west to Nebraska, and then someone will answer you. I've done some reading, watched some shows, watched some videos, talked to other hunters who've been out here and who've done it. Talked to the people who live in this area, and just, try to be a sponge of information in that and save money. And, this isn't like Iowa, where I can go park my truck for, 4 hours while I sit in a tree stand. There's a lot of driving, and that's one thing that to be honest with you, I underestimated the amount of driving and the gas money that I would need for this trip. So that's definitely a learning experience. So, I mean, I'm driving a lot of miles too to get to these locations, and I'm using 4-wheel drive. That's sucking the gas up. So, just a little bit underprepared that way, but everything else, just, I don't know. I bought extra socks. I bought a new pair of boots. I bought some extra underwear. I went to the grocery store and bought, I try to do the grocery store thing as cheap as possible. Water, Gatorade, bread, and ham loaf.
Oof.
If you don't know what ham loaf is, it's the cheapest ham mixed with cheese, calorie stuffed type of meat you can find.
Dude, only the best for Dallas-Fort Worth.
That's correct.
Oh man. So what were you looking for maybe for a guy that's thinking about hunting mule deer? What should they be looking for when they're taking a look at these aerial maps and stuff, when they're trying to plan their hunt? It sounds like you learned a few things from different people and from some different resources you tapped into. What was it that you were looking into while looking at those maps?
Man, I was just trying to get the lay of the land. But one thing that I was kind of taken by surprise that the aerial maps don't show you is the difference in elevation, and how actually big these hills are and how wide these valleys are out here. It's one of those things where you can do all the preparation in the world, but until you get out here and do it, it's one of those things like you can be book smart or you can have, the street smarts. Coming out here is definitely a street smart education, because you can be prepared and know everything there is to know about, muleys and Nebraska, prairie hunting and antelope and all that stuff. But until you actually do it and fail and fail and fail again, that's where your real preparation for your next trip kind of comes into play. I mean, a guy can work out and be in great shape, and I'm sure you found this out. But and then in the Rockies, you hit that elevation, it's a different story.
Oh yeah, like you said, I think everything you just said there is so true. It's, I think planning and thinking about a hunt while sitting at a computer is just light years different from what it actually is like on the ground. And you have to do as much as you possibly can to prepare beforehand, but still go into it. You need to know that, hey, it's going to be a whole nother experience once you get out there. Like you said, one thing, like you said, I do tons of studying of aerial maps and Google Earth and everything. And you think you've got an idea of the lay of the land and the terrain and everything. But like you said, when you're looking at Google Earth, even on something like that shows you the terrain and the mountains and everything, what looks like a foothill on a map, when you're actually on the ground out there, it looks like some real serious work. It's a lot different when you're actually out there. And another thing you talked about was preparing, physically. I don't know about for you. I'd be curious to hear if you felt like you needed or if you had to do anything to prepare for this hunt. But when it comes to hunting elk, at least in the places where I'm at and where most people are hunting elk up in the high country, it's just a totally different experience than chasing whitetails. You just really need to prepare for that and over-prepare. Because I think lots of times people think, well, I'll do a couple of runs here and there and just be in basic, decent shape. But when you're out there with a big pack on your back, whether you're day hiking in or if you're backpack hunting out in the backcountry, you don't want to be not enjoying your hunt because you're not physically able to, or if you're in pain because you've overworked yourself. So for me, luckily I do a lot of trips out west, just like I said, to do different backpacking, hiking type things. So I've got a decent amount of experience. I know what I need to do to get ready for that, but it's definitely something I wouldn't undersell. It's important. Did you do anything to work physically leading up to your trip, Dan, or do you wish you did, or how you feeling on that front?
Well, I'll tell you, everybody can always do a little bit more cardio workout. But for me, I knew that there was going to be a lot of leg work involved. So when I found out that I was going to be coming out here, man, I squatted. And I squatted and squatted and squatted and did the leg press machine at my gym and did calf raises and just build my legs up as much as I could, I guess, without, hurting myself. And I believe it kind of helped. But, walking up a straight, a really big hill out here, I'm still winded. But, after the first day and the very first morning hike in, where your heart gets pumping real hard, and then you're able to, what I call, get the shed hunting lather. You start sweating, you get that lather, all your joints are greased up, and you're good to go for the rest of the day.
Yep. It's a good place to be.
Yep.
What about gear? Are you packing any different things other than what you usually take when you're whitetail hunting? Is there anything else that someone doing a hunt like this should think about?
I'll be completely honest with you. The most important thing I have with me, aside from the actual hunting bow and arrow stuff, is a water bladder that I purchased and put in my pack. That thing has saved my life. Just because yesterday I peed one time. That's a little bit of dehydration.
Yeah.
Yesterday it was also 90 degrees out here.
Yes.
So it's hot, and I was doing a lot of sweating. But that thing kept me, you can only carry so much stuff with you, and that little water bladder that I had, it pretty much kept me hydrated enough so far the rest of the day. Just put a little bit more water in it when you go out the next morning, and you pretty much set for a day.
Yeah, that's awesome. For whatever reason, I haven't went the water bladder route. I'm just kind of old school, and I've always used my water bottles for all my backpacking and trips, hiking trips like that. But I feel like I should just man up and get one of those, because it seems pretty nice to be able to not need to worry about stopping and grabbing a bottle. You can just take that hose and drink while you go. Oh yeah,
yep. That's what I've done this entire week so far. That and a good pair of boots. Those are breaking it all down. Those are the two most important things.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing
for me.
Yeah, for any trip, whether it be stalking mule deer or elk or in the mountains or the plains, I think boots are just so important. And for deer hunting, it's important too. You want warm boots, and you want some boots that are going to keep you dry and relatively scent free. But I think for for a hunt where you're on your feet the whole time and hiking around, it's just so much more important. And I think it's important not to buy a pair of hiking boots that you haven't tried yet. Or if you're going to buy some online, plan on getting them, trying them on, and possibly needing to return them, because there really is a lot of difference between different brands and different styles, and how that's going to fit your foot and how that's going to support you for whatever type of hunt you're going to do. There's nothing worse than buying a pair of boots and your first day having horrible blisters and being in serious pain the whole rest of your hunt. So
right. Well, the thing that I found out is, when I first bought these boots earlier in the summer, I would mow my yard in them, and hell, I was even walking on the treadmill in my basement with them on. But you can't emulate big cliffs or huge drop-offs or walking sideways on a hill, or you can't emulate that. And it's one of those things where you really won't know until it's probably too late.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. And so what I always do for my trips is I'm always packing a blister repair kit. And there's different things like that. I don't know if you've used anything like this, Dan, but there's like stuff called moleskin, which is like a little padding you can put over a blister and cover it up so it's not inside your boots. But kind of my hillbilly blister kit is just a roll of duct tape. I'll just bring a little bit of duct tape with me on any trip I ever take out west where I'm going to be hiking a lot. And if I get a blister coming up, I'll just stick a little bit of duct tape on it, and it just slides real nice in my boot the rest of the time, and I don't have any issues with it. So if you don't have any of the real stuff, a little bit of duct tape will usually fix the problem. That's something that applies to most things in life, right?
That's right.
Now, what about, let's go back to actually being in the hunt now. Do you have any other tips for someone going on a mule deer hunt from an actual hunting perspective? I mean, so far I think I've taken from you, take it slow, always be paying attention. What else? Are there any other key lessons that you've learned about the actual tactical piece of hunting mule deer in a situation like you're in?
Yeah, I mean, if a wind's coming, you got to pay attention to the wind. If the wind's coming over top of a hill, they're going to be, if they're bedded on that hill, they're going to be on the opposite side. So the wind is blowing over top of the hill, so they can catch the scent. I've noticed tonight. I noticed that I hunted over top of a green field, and I watched all these mule deer come off the hills, and it was almost like a staging area. They'd crest the ridge or sideswipe it because they never skyline themselves. They kind of come around there, and then they bed down again, and they just observe that area. So, it's I'm still learning myself. This is only day 3 for me. So it's like me wanting to give someone advice is it's not, I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Right.
So I don't really have any advice except for just be as observant as humanly possible. That's
probably about as good advice as you can give. I guess, like you said, you don't want to do too much blind leading the blind. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of in a similar boat too. I mean, I hunted elk last year for a week. My first time out there in Idaho, and learned a lot. But probably the biggest thing I learned is that I still don't know so much. There's so much to learn, and I guess we take that for granted. I think, Dan, with whitetails, right? We've been hunting whitetails our whole lives. We've been studying them in detail, for a really long time, and have so much experience with it. But going to a totally new place with a totally new animal, it's just a different game. It's totally different. So I'm still trying to figure out, okay, where the heck do these things bed, and when and where are they going to feed, and how are they traveling, and all those different things. And for me, just like you said, there's not a whole lot of advice I can give to an elk hunter except for prepare as much as you can physically, learn the land, and then get away from pressure out here, out in Idaho and Colorado and most places where there's decent elk populations. If you're hunting public land, it's going to be, you're going to be usually going to be competing with other people, And from everything I've heard and seen, the farther you can get away from access points and roads and other campsites or anything like that, the better chance you're going to have at finding a bull. And so that's something I'm trying to do. We're backpacking in, so we're just hiking in there deep with everything on our backs and just trying to get far away from everything and hopefully find some secluded herds of elk. And then again, kind of like with whitetails, in heavily pressured areas, calling and really aggressive techniques don't typically work with whitetails. Like here in Michigan, I'm not going to do a whole bunch of rattling or snort wheezing or something, or put a decoy in front of these deer because they've seen it from 20 other guys over the last 2 days. Similarly, what I've learned is in a lot of these higher pressured public lands for elk, same deal. Everyone wants to go out there with a bugle and make all sorts of noise and think that they're going to call in the great big herd bull. But from what I saw and from what I've heard from other more experienced hunters, that's just not the case. They are, they've heard a whole lot of idiot hunters bugling and making them sound like idiots, and they react to that negatively. And so I think last year I was pushing a lot of elk away because I was trying to call too much. So this year I'm gonna do a lot more listening and following versus trying to make a whole bunch of noise myself. So I don't know. Hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about after my hunt. I'm leaving in a couple days here and driving out there to eastern Idaho, and we're gonna give it the old college try. So
heck yeah.
I think if nothing
all
else,
you can do.
Yeah, it's all you can do. And if nothing else, for me, and I'm thinking it's probably the same with you, with these first hunts for a new animal like this, the new experience, it really is about the experience. I'm definitely not at the point now where I'm not at the point yet with elk hunting where I'm trying to, get a trophy or shoot a big mature bull or anything, and I'm not going to be disappointed if I don't. For me, it's being out there, seeing something new, learning something new, and challenging myself in different ways.
Yeah, for sure. Same here.
Yeah. So what do you think, Dan? If there was someone out there on the fence about trying something new, would you recommend to someone right now that's a hardcore whitetail hunter, would you recommend they go out west or go up north or go somewhere different and hunt some other big game? And if so, why?
Man, you only live once. And I try to live my life with no regrets, saying, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And that's kind of what made me decide to do this trip. So yes, do something different, go outside of your comfort zone. And I was scared. I shouldn't say scared, but a little nervous, driving out here. What am I doing? What's this all about? You get out here, you learn it. It's a new experience. The cool thing is watching how animals move with no trees, and watching how they use the lay of the land is something that I'm going to be able to take back to Iowa to hunt, because watching a deer move through the woods, it's like one of those things. You can't see the forest because of the trees.
Yeah.
Here there's no forest. So you get to watch their movements, how they use the wind to their advantage with no trees. And I'm going to be able to take that back to Iowa. And I already have a couple spots picked out where I think I need to move my tree stands to a different location, because I'm thinking like that. So to answer your question, yes, everybody should try something different, whether it's, going to hunt elk, mule deer, moose, hunting whitetails in a different state. It's a different experience, and it will make you a better hunter.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's one of those things where I think a lot of people just get set in their ways and their comfort zone, and they know what they do, and they know they like it. And there's a lot of guys who say, I love hunting whitetails. I love doing this thing every fall. Why would I do anything different? And I think in a lot of cases, you just don't know what you're missing until you experience it. And I feel like we've talked about, I feel like going out west and doing this different type of hunting elk, opened up a whole different part of the hunt for me. it's a whole nother, like a box in the hunting world that I had never looked into before. And I opened it up, and it opened up this whole different piece of what it means to be a hunter, and what hunting means, and what I need to do to be a successful hunter. It just opened up all these different possibilities, and it engaged me. Like I said before, it engages you as a hunter in ways that's really, really, I guess I don't really know the words. The words aren't coming, but it's special. It's something really unique, and it's special, and it's worth experiencing. And for me, now that I have experienced it, I don't see myself ever not coming out here. As often as I can, as often as time allows and I can afford it, I'll be coming out here at least every year, hopefully, to chase some kind of big game animal out west or up in Alaska or Canada or whatever it is, whatever I can manage to pull off. This is the type of hunting that I would like to continue to do, because it's an awesome experience. It's an incredible challenge, and I think for a lot of people that live east of the Mississippi, which the large majority of deer hunters do, there's a lot of beautiful country on the eastern part of the country and in the Midwest and the South. Awesome country. But there, at least for me personally, there's just something special about going out west. It's wide open. There's not as many people. And it's just gorgeous country, from the grasslands in Nebraska and to Colorado. You hit the mountain ranges, and it hits me somewhere deep down, and I just feel like there's something out there that calls to me. And when the mountains call, I have to go. And so that's what I'll be doing probably for the rest of my life.
Yep.
It's good stuff, that's for sure. So, I don't know. I think we made our sales pitch to everyone out there. I think we've now done it. We've both now gone out west and tried some different kind of hunting. Of course, we still love hunting whitetails a ton, and that's what we do the most of the time. So, I think for everyone out there listening, don't feel like you need to give up on whitetails or give up on your passion or anything, but try something different every once in a while. I think it'll make you enjoy hunting even more and appreciate certain things about whitetails too, I think, to a degree. So what do you think, Dan? What's the plan for tomorrow, for the hunt tomorrow? Are you going to make it happen?
I'm gonna go way down the new state record in Nebraska mule deer.
All right. Is this the state record spike?
I'm gonna probably shoot a doe.
Hey, that'll be pretty sweet. If you can pull off a spot and stalk on a doe, that's an awesome accomplishment for your first hunt, I think.
Heck yeah.
I'm gonna be tomorrow packing up my bags and loading things up, seeing how light I can get my pack. I'm hoping to have a relatively light backpack to take into the mountains, because I don't want to be carrying the whole kitchen sink 5 miles or 10 miles into the wilderness. So I'm going to be working on that tomorrow. And then early the next day, we'll be piling in a minivan. We've converted a minivan into the Elkmobile for us, and we're going to be driving 24 hours into Idaho. So I'm pretty stoked for that.
Sounds good. Well, good luck, Mark. I hope you shoot a swab.
I appreciate it, buddy, and good luck to you too. And probably by the next podcast episode, we'll have some updates on both of our hunts for the Wired Hunt Nation. So I'll let you go, Dan, and let's talk soon.
All right. We'll talk when you get back.
Sounds good, buddy. Shoot a big one.
Yep.
Well, I know this episode was different than usual, but I hope you were maybe just a little bit inspired to try something new yourself. And as I record this, I am literally just minutes away from leaving for my own Idaho elk hunting adventure. So hopefully, Dan and I will both have some good stories for you soon. And then before you know it, whitetail season will be here too. That said, as always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a rating or review on iTunes. It takes just a few seconds, and it really helps our cause. Big thanks to the 67 of you that have already done that. Speaking of appreciation, we'd like to thank our partners who help make this show possible. Big thanks to Sitka Gear, Redneck Blinds, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Carbon Express Arrows, HuntSoft, Lacrosse Boots, Big & J Long Range Attractants, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. Finally, be sure to visit wiredtohunt.com/episode 23 to view the show notes and links from today's episode. That said, thank you so much for being here with us today. Until next week, stay wired to hunt.